his cabinet to cut their agencies.
The Congressional Budget Office projects 14 million people would lose health care coverage next year.
CBO estimates, they're very notoriously bad.
We should abolish the Congressional Budget Office. It is a totally dishonest, disgustingly wrong.
We disagree strenuously.
I think if you read this entire report, I'm pretty encouraged by it, and it actually exceeded my expectations.
The president's intention right now is to donate his salary, and he has kindly asked that you all help determine where that goes.
A major nor'easter has begun to lash the East Coast. The storm could dump up to 18 inches of snow.
Okay, that right there is 6th Avenue. If you go over to the right of the screen, the next block over that runs parallel is 5th Avenue. That's where Trump Tower is. I'm driving down 5th Avenue today, and did 3 spin-outs in the middle of Trump.
You don't even have a car? That's not true. You don't even have a car.
Okay, the car that I was in.
You're a taxi driver.
Yes.
You haven't driven since 1981.
Taxi cab driver. I told the guy, I said, sir, this is a sedan. You do not have the right tires. You need to go home for the safety of your life.
And you're a woman who hasn't seen snow until you were
I know. I kept praying for snow. I literally said, oh, Heavenly Father, please save us.
Listen, 30 million people impacted by a blizzard that is raging. It's combined with a nor'easter. As you can see, it's scooting up the northeast coast. We got light snow. We got freezing rain. We could have a foot or two before it's all done by later tonight.
I read that 1 in 5 Americans is somehow affected by the snow.
Absolutely.
1 in 5. Wow.
Here in New York City, they have declared a state of emergency because it's just kind of a mess. So a lot of people are going to watch TV all day long, put down the remote. You got your channel right there.
Several states have declared a state of emergency, and a lot of people are out of school, but Washington, D.C., they're going to make the decision this morning. Have you heard what they decided? We'll have to find out.
I've not heard.
I'm not sure if they
I would say they should close the school because they're terrible at snow. Washington is terrible at snow.
They are absolutely.
Are they?
Historically, yeah. I mean,
no one has shovels.
You get a half an inch of snow, and they will declare a state of emergency. So stand by as soon as we know whether or not Washington, D.C. is going to go to work. Usually, in a situation like that, they say, okay, non-essential employees, you don't have to show up. How demoralizing is that when you realize, I'm not essential?
Yeah. How about this?
Great! I don't have to go to work.
President Trump is realizing right now he could never call in sick. He lives in his workplace. All he has to do is go downstairs. So he does not take a sick day today. Meanwhile, the White House firing back at the budget report that came out yesterday, estimating that millions of people will lose health care coverage under the GOP plan.
But the report also shows the Obamacare replacement would reduce the federal deficit by more than $300 billion.
What do we believe?
So there's some good news, there's some bad news, right, Ed Henry?
Exactly. That last part is something about reducing the deficit that could win over some wavering conservatives to the president's side. But there's no question this CBO report was a blow to the president's efforts in the short term because it suggests that a whole bunch of people are going to be knocked off their insurance, something we knew even before the report. And so what the president is doing is perhaps what he does best, which is fighting back and fighting hard. He put together a group of what he called victims of Obamacare to say, wait a second. He blamed the media and said the media is only doing positive stories of the people who have been covered by Obamacare. He said, fine, but they're not pointing out the people who have lost their doctor, or have lost their plans, and have not pointed out that the CEO at Aetna has said that Obamacare, current law, is in a death spiral. So the president said something needs to be done. So he and the House Republican leaders have this plan. The Congressional Budget Office came out. Here's their verdict. They say 14 million more people will be uninsured by 2018, 24 million uninsured by 2026, and that, of course, because of lifting the mandates under Obamacare. They also say premiums are going to go up, but interestingly, some good news for the president, premiums are going to go up less than they're going up now already under existing law, Obamacare. Remember, they've been spiking anyway, and as you say, the deficit would come down big time under the House GOP plan. So the president came out and said, wait a second, this is only phase one. We're going to do more down the road in order to cover more people. Watch.
Secretary Price and I, along with my entire administration, and a lot of people in the Senate and a lot of people in the House, are committed to repealing and replacing this disastrous law with a health care plan that lowers cost, expands choice, and ensures access for everyone.
And that snowstorm already having an impact, yes, on this health care debate. On Wednesday, the House Budget Committee was supposed to move forward with the next phase in marking up this Republican legislation. That's now been moved back to Thursday. Why is that significant? Well, that House Budget Committee has a lot of conservatives from the Freedom Caucus that are very skeptical of this legislation, and they're trying to kill it in the House Budget Committee. This storm actually may give the White House a little bit more time to try to work some of those members, guys.
Yeah, but Ed, you left out the important part with the Freedom Caucus. Tonight was going to be the pizza and bowling night, and they've canceled that.
Yeah, look, this storm is wreaking havoc. They can't have pizza. They're not going to be able to have the pepperoni. They were going to, I wonder if the president was going to get those sneakers you had yesterday.
Oh, that's right.
Just push the button, get the app. But, they can do it Wednesday, do it Thursday. They got time.
All right. Eddie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. There are some good things. There are some bad things. Federal deficit going down, of course, that's a great thing. The reason the number of uninsured goes down is because you don't get penalized if you don't opt in. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you look at some of the premiums that do go up, though, in the long run, especially for the elderly, that's a big problem because their premiums will go up if they don't make a lot of money.
Yeah, well, yeah, they say the people that are going to be hurt most under the current plan, the way the calculus is done by the CBO, there are Americans between the ages of 50 and 64, and they're right before Medicare, the older part, and the last leg of their career. That translates into mostly Trump voters. But then you factor in the fact this is a three-phase plan. The second phase is when Tom Price is supposed to, theoretically, sit there and put in regulations that'll make this more of a conservative project.
Right. And also, it's the politics. Both Paul Ryan and Donald Trump both said they promised the repeal would not kick anybody out of health care. And that's true with the private market because it's your choice. If you want to buy insurance, you buy insurance.
Well,
if you don't, you don't. But in the public sector, that's where like 14 million people who currently have Medicaid are going to be impacted because the amount of money the federal government gives the states is going to change, and then fewer people will wind up with Medicaid, and that's where that big number comes
Here's
from.
the thing. Donald Trump said the Democrats are the ones that put us in this mess. They're complaining about this. And can you really even trust the CBO? Can you trust this report? Because Jonathan Gruber, who was the architect of Obamacare, he said blatantly, we played the sound bites for you yesterday, he said, we can trick the CBO. He said, we can call them mandates and not taxes, and they'll pass this thing through.
Right. Well, that was the Obama administration. I would hope that the Trump administration is more forthcoming along with Congress. However, Newt Gingrich, who was Speaker of the House once upon a time, he says the CBO, actually, they should just get rid of it. Did you see him last night with Martha? Watch this.
They should abolish the Congressional Budget Office. It is corrupt. It is dishonest. It was totally wrong in Obamacare by huge, huge margins. I don't trust a single word they have published, and I don't believe them. Let me be very clear. Okay, I helped balance the budget 4 straight times, the only time in your lifetime. We fought the Congressional Budget Office every time. When Obamacare came out, they used the architect of Obamacare as their advisor on how to score Obamacare, and their scoring, you go back and look at it, it is a totally dishonest, disgustingly wrong, and it is that whole thing should be abolished. They should replace it by putting out to bid and having 3 to 5 professional firms score these things. Nobody has an exact score. Dr. Tom Price, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, pointed out there are whole sections of this bill they didn't score. So I really do think it's disgusting, and I'm really disappointed that the Republicans have not abolished the Congressional Budget Office because it is so profoundly dishonest.
The guy in charge, though, was approved by Tom Price and his committee and was appointed during the years when Bush was in office. So maybe it's just hard to, in 2014, they came out and said, we are going to stop looking at Obamacare. It is now impossible by the numbers that are coming out to score it. So they said, we throw up our hands. That was in 2014. That was a story in the Hill.
Right, and back in the day, they estimated, the CBO estimated 23 million Americans would have health care through the Affordable Care Act by 2017 right now. 23 million. You know how many there are? 9.3.
Wow.
So they were way off.
So we have the director of the Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney, the founder of the Freedom Caucus. He's going to be joining us in a little while to reflect on what the CBO does, what they liked about the plan, what they didn't like about the review. He'll be on with us shortly.
Yeah, they want to make a lot of changes. We'll talk to him about what those changes are. We've all read through the CBO report, and we have some questions for him, too. But in the meantime, let's hand it over to Heather Childers, who has more headlines for us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. And we're going to talk a little bit more about
about the weather situation outside, which is getting worse by the minute. This extreme weather, a live look outside of our studios where a monster blizzard is bearing down. 50 million Americans bracing for up to 2 feet of snow, 50-mile-an-hour winds, and devastating coastal flooding. Air travel already crippled with nearly 6,000 flights canceled or delayed. People also told to stay off the roads, and this is why. In Chicago, snow and ice leading to this 30-car pileup already. Meteorologist Adam Klotz has the very latest on the storm in just a few minutes, so stay tuned. Well, the dramatic moment that police use a fire hose to blast a man right out of a van caught on camera. Police near Los Angeles say that he locked himself inside a van with gasoline and lighter fluid during a traffic stop. Fearing the worst, officers sneak around the back and then turn on the powerful water. But police then forced to open fire after the suspect pulls out a knife. Well, that suspect died at the hospital. And the president giving the CIA the power to take out suspected terrorists with drone strikes. According to the Washington Journal, it is a complete 180 from the Obama administration policy, which, you may remember, only allowed the CIA to locate the target. The military was then in charge of pulling the trigger. The CIA first using its new authority late last month in a strike on a senior al-Qaeda leader in Syria. And the Justice Department now has 6 more days to provide proof to back up that wiretapping claim against the Obama administration. The White House saying that it is about the broader surveillance activity during the 2016 election. The House Intel Committee may subpoena the agency if it fails to comply by the new deadline. So we'll see if that happens. That's a look at Trendlines.
We will. All right, Heather, thank you.
I'll be back.
All right, coming up straight ahead, 12 minutes after the hour. An Obamacare architect calling the GOP repeal plan a scam. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to getting the thing to pass.
A former CEO official joins us next with his reaction.
Plus, can't read, no problem. You can always be a teacher. Not kidding. Literacy tests for teachers now becoming a thing of the past.
About time. Too much pressure on knowing how to read and write and do math.
Yes, but you wanna say no, what do you mean?
A number of years ago, the architect of Obamacare has actually called the new GOP repeal plan a scam. But get this, that same architect once admitted he scammed the CBO in order to pass Obamacare. Watch this.
This bill was written in a tortured way to make sure CBO did not score the mandate as taxes. If CBO scored the mandate as taxes, the bill dies. Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to getting the thing to pass.
Okay, critical to get it passed. Joining us with his reaction is former CBO director and president of the American Action Forum, Douglas Holtz-Eakin. Good morning to you, Douglas.
Morning. How are you?
Doing okay. I was shocked when I first heard Jonathan Gruber say that. Essentially, they pulled the wool over everybody's eyes to get the thing passed.
I mean, if you think back to that time, then President Obama had run opposing the mandate and promising not to tax the middle class. Now they were doing one or the other. I mean, there was no way around it. So they had to be pretty non-transparent to get it through. No question about it.
Okay, so they were not transparent. However, you say with this new Republican plan regarding health care, they are being transparent, right?
This is 120 pages. Anyone can read it. There's no real attempt to deceive here. What the Republicans have said is, we can rely on Americans to make good decisions about their health care, and we can be honest about what we're asking them to do. And that's what the bill is.
Sure. All right, so you look at it, and there are 2 headlines. One, if you're a budget hawk, you love the fact that over 10 years you're going to save something like $335 billion. That's good.
That's the lead. I mean, and I think this has been misunderstood. CBO's job is to advise Congress on budgetary matters, and this is a, quote, reconciliation bill, special procedures, and to qualify it has to save $2 billion. It saved $335 billion more than it needed to. That's the headline.
That is the headline for you, but for the mainstream media, the headline is 14 million Americans are going to lose health care. Next year it could grow to 20-some million in a couple of years.
And the reason they, quote, lose their coverage is they decide not to take it up. The premiums are the same, the subsidies are the same, but the mandate's gone. And so now you stop making it illegal to be uninsured, and people choose not to buy health insurance. And you have to decide for yourself, since they decided not to do it, are they worse off?
Great point. Because back in the day when people started to realize they were going to be forced by the federal government to buy insurance that they might not want, they hated that. Well, now they're going to get the chance to do whatever they want, right?
I think that's a major takeaway of the CBO score. I think the other thing that's gotten lost in this is the CBO says that, you know, if you do everything that's in the bill, premiums go down by 10% compared to the Affordable Care Act. The number one complaint about the Affordable Care Act has been skyrocketing premiums. So this works. And, you know, it was a bill that would promise to control health care costs, and it does that.
Right. Let me ask you this, the way Congress works. Donald Trump yesterday was talking about, look, this is just the beginning, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. There's going to be a lot of negotiations. Is there wiggle room? Can they move this around and change it substantially?
Mechanically, they have lots of opportunities. It'll go to the Budget Committee in the House this week. They can amend, change, modify it. It'll go to the floor of the House. Again, it can be open for amendments. It'll then have to go over to the Senate. So there are a lot of chances to modify this. I think the key question is, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to get into a bidding war where you say it's illegal to be uninsured and we're going to spend taxpayer money to make sure everyone gets their coverage? Or are you going to have a bill where people can decide what they want to do and we're going to give them a lot of options? That's it.
Okay. Well, we wanted the score, now we got it. Douglas, thank you very much for joining us today from a snowy Washington, D.C. Thank you, sir. All right, meanwhile, down in D.C., Sean Spicer ambushed at the Apple Store by a raging liberal, and apparently he's not alone. Todd Starnes said the same thing happened to him in the produce aisle.
We have some quick headlines for you this morning. Tennessee challenging the federal refugee program because they don't want to pay for it. The state says the program is forcing them to spend money on additional services. The lawsuit calls for it to be shut down until the federal government pays all the costs. And more than $1 million of your tax dollars used to clean up this disgusting mess that was left behind by Dakota Pipeline protesters. The Army Corps of Engineers hauling away 835 dumpsters worth of trash and debris.
All right, you can protest, but please don't litter. All right, now let me tell you this story. Press Secretary Sean Spicer ambushed at the Apple Store of all places.
You know you work for a fascist, right? You work for a fascist. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about destroying our country, Sean?
But apparently Sean Spicer not alone. Fox radio host and author of The Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again, Todd Starnes, said the same thing happened to you. You weren't at the Apple Store. You were actually over in the Apple aisle at the produce department.
The produce section. You know, guys, I live among the indigenous liberal people of Brooklyn, and so it's not really surprising this happened. But I think it really exposes a well-known secret in the world of liberalism, and that's that many of these feminists are lacking in the social graces.
So what happened? You were at the grocery store and somebody said, hey, you're the guy from Fox Radio?
Yeah, that's right. She apparently had seen me doing a lot of the Fox and Friends hits and read the column at foxnews.com, and she confronts me right there in the produce section and starts hollering at me at being, how could you work at Fox News, and so on and so forth.
So wait a minute, she recognized you from watching Fox News?
She's watching right now. You want to say hi? How you doing there?
So what was your response?
Well, look, my mama raised me right as a good Southerner.
You didn't kick her and run away?
Well, no, Ainsley, because, look, by nature you want to tell her where to go plant her the kumquats, but you don't do that.
Is that the lady who approached you?
That's not the lady.
All right.
That's not the
lady.
lady.
That is the woman that woman ambushed Sean Spicer.
Sure did.
And she's an interesting character. Let's learn a little bit about her. She is a woman. Thanks for that update.
She closes her eyes in pictures. We'll continue to stall until you can pull up the email.
You know what? I don't have it.
So anyway, your point is about
you know, your book is about deplorables.
Yes.
But this topic where the liberals are the polar opposite of the deplorables, aren't they?
Well, absolutely. And look, she was talking about the sheer audacity of Sean Spicer actually being nice and pleasant to her as she's, you know, reaming the poor guy out there in the Apple store. You know, the sheer audacity is this feminist going bonkers there in public. And I write about this in the Deplorables Guide. People are really fed up with this kind of nonsense where the left, they don't tolerate dissent. They want to shut you down. They want to embarrass you. And this is exactly what happened to Sean Spicer.
They're hoping to catch you on a bad day, right? When you've had a lot of things go wrong so that you blow up at them.
Absolutely. Todd does not have days like that. I don't know what you're referring to.
Who, me?
I'm talking about maybe Sean Spicer.
Sean Spicer took the high road.
Yeah.
You know, he did.
all
And he
have
really
bad
should be
days.
commended for that. I think it says a lot about his character that he didn't lash out at this lady because, look, who knew there was something worse than Hillary Clinton's cackling? Sweet Lord Almighty, this woman just would not stop. Unbelievable.
She was asking him a lot of questions.
Very
What's it like to
inquisitive.
work for a fascist, stuff like that.
Very inquisitive.
All right. All right. So are you going to start buying your food online now, and somebody will just bring it to your house?
Yeah, Teapot will deliver.
But not today. I tried. They're backed up for about 5 days because of the snow.
A little snowy out there.
That's because everybody was at the store yesterday. All right. Todd, thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks,
Good to
All
see
right.
you.
Meanwhile, first it was Brexit, then President Trump was elected, and now a brand new political bombshell that will have liberals in an uproar. Daniel Hannan, a member of the European Parliament, is joining us next. Good morning to you, sir.
He started the whole Brexit movement, and Kid Rock is locked and loaded.
Woo! In your face, China.
His brand new Made in America business idea you're going to love next. But first, happy birthday to Billy Crystal. I know you're watching. The City Slicker star is 69 years old today. He made his debut on Howard Cosell's Saturday Night Live. Remember that?
He looks marvelous.
Yes, he does.
That's what we think of made in China.
He's not going to be invited to Mar-a-Lago in May. It's your shot of the morning. Kid Rock locked and loaded. Have a grill not made in America. The singer has a suggestion. Shoot them.
All right, Kid Rock. He is catapulting foreign-made grills into the air, blasting them out of the sky with his shotgun. Calls it redneck skeet shooting.
Is that his spokesmodel?
Might be a 50 cal. It's also Kid Rock's way of promoting his new line of grills that he says are 100% American-made, hoping to bring jobs back to the United States of America. I have personally seen these grills. They're cool.
Are they?
They're about $100. Well worth it.
Take
They've
that,
got
George
a gas
Foreman.
one, and they've got a charcoal.
Oh, fantastic. And he's got a gun.
He does have a gun.
Meanwhile, now to our top story. The giant nor'easter moving up the coast at this hour. You are taking a look at Chester, New York. And that is it. Chester, New York. It looks very much like around the block.
Rochester.
Oh, Rochester, New York. Okay. I've heard of that, too. Rochester can handle it. This is nothing for them. This is summer for them.
Well, 50 million Americans, Brian, are bracing for up to 2 feet of snow, blinding winds, and devastating coastal flooding.
Nearly 6,000 flights already canceled or delayed, stranding many people at the airport. If you're traveling today, make sure you call first. Let's call meteorologist Adam Klotz. He is outside at 48th and 6th Avenue where, you know, because we're surrounded by skyscrapers, the wind is not howling, but it's out there, isn't it?
It is. Because of the skyscrapers, you get a little bit of breaks here and there, but when it tunnels down through these buildings, it is intense. And, yeah, at times, these little ice pellets, this small snow really kind of pounds you in the face and makes my eyes water here a little bit. But we are seeing snow at this point. That's not the case for everyone up and down the East Coast. There's some places a little farther to the south where we are actually looking at, yes, a little bit more of a rain-snow mix. That's the case in Washington, D.C., also the case in the Philadelphia area. Still for us, we're still looking at solid snow here in New York City, and it's coming down quick. We're actually looking at it piling up on the quick side for us today. The winds, that's a big part of the story. Still around 30 miles an hour here in New York City. You need a 35-mile-an-hour wind, a consistent wind, for you to get to those blizzard conditions. So we're still not quite there yet, but we're going to continue to watch this increase. Visibility, it's been lower for us than it has been for some spots. You're seeing a little farther to the south down the coast. There's spots where visibility is 4 or 5 miles an hour because it's rain. But areas where the wind's strong and you're looking at the snow, Those are the spots where the visibility is low, and we're seeing it here across really throughout the New York area with visibility down to half a mile. The wind, when it blows, boy, it is intense out here, guys. And what's really interesting, this snow just keeps piling up. We clean it, it piles up every 15 minutes. That's going to continue throughout the rest of the day.
And Adam, real quickly, is there still a possibility some spots could wind up with 2 feet?
That's going to be farther inland, but yeah, I think 18 inches widespread wouldn't be a surprise.
All right,
Oh, man.
go run for shelter. Yeah.
Get the shovel and the Advil.
All right, thanks, Adam. Heather Childers, you have some breaking news. Then we have Daniel Hannan standing by.
We do. We have this story for you. Prosecutors calling the maker of a new Michael Brown documentary pathetic, releasing this unedited surveillance video to disprove the claim in Stranger Fruit. It shows Brown exchanging bags of cigars with employees, leading to a heated argument. Well, the documentary alleges that Brown did not rob the store and was involved in a drug deal. Filmmaker Jason Pollock going head-to-head against Martha McCallum, trying to defend himself.
There's some people in America with so much bias inside of them that they just want to think that Michael Brown is a bad guy.
It's not possible in your brain that what happened there was what was found by both the grand jury and 40 FBI agents. You're discounting. You're saying all of that doesn't matter. Their investigation is absolutely not true.
When
Michael
the facts
Brown
of
did
this
not
case
reach
come out,
into that
when the
car
facts of
to
this
grab
case,
his
excuse
gun.
me, miss. Can I speak now?
Whoa. Well, the St. Louis County prosecutor says that Pollock is making up his own facts. And a Democratic lawmaker led away in handcuffs after refusing to leave an immigration and customs office. Illinois Congressman Luis Gutierrez throwing a temper tantrum after a meeting with ICE officials. Why? Apparently he didn't get the answer that he wanted regarding the president's plan to deport millions of illegal criminals. So ICE called the cops. Gutierrez tweeted this photo of the stunt, which not only drained resources from the federal police department, but also disrupted the office. And you can't read? No problem. You can teach anyway. Literacy tests for teachers in New York are now officially a thing of the past. Education officials voting to scrap the exam for prospective teachers, saying that it's unnecessary to test candidates who already have a college degree. Critics blasting the move, saying that it will weaken the candidate pool and that students will ultimately pay the price. And those are a look at your headlines. Back to you.
All right, let's bring in Daniel Hannan. Daniel Hannan is a member of the European Parliament. He did something very interesting. He got rid of his own job. He came up with this idea about Brexit. He said, it's not good for the UK. We want out. Next thing you know, you win the referendum, and you're out of a job, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean...
And you love it.
The next thing was like 26 years of my life of solid campaigning, so it wasn't like, you know, the next day, but...
you saw enough.
You know, it's not just that I saw enough. The European Union is not in a good way, right? It's in a bad way demographically, economically, it's stagnating, and there's a whole world out there. We can now lift our eyes to wider horizons and reconnect with older friends on more distant continents.
So what can we expect to see in Europe?
Well, I'm afraid the people in Brussels have responded to Brexit in the way they respond to everything by saying this just shows that we need even more European integration, even more powers for Brussels. It shows that we were right all along. Let's say this more loudly. And of course, that is the problem. I think there's probably not a single country in Europe that wouldn't want some return of powers from Brussels, but it's not on the menu.
Okay, so, you know, a lot of folks are unfamiliar with what's going on, aside from the fact that England said, let's get out of this EU club. Now it looks like there are a number of other countries who are just on the verge of saying, I've had it up to here with them too.
If the EU had been a little bit more flexible when we asked for some return of powers, we would have stayed.
Like what?
Well, if they'd allowed us, for example, you know, to do more of our own trade deals, if they'd allowed us to determine more of our taxes, more of our economic policy, farming, fishing, if they'd shown any flexibility, I think people would have seen that as, okay, they've set a precedent, powers don't just go upwards, they can come down as well. But they couldn't do it. They've reached the point where they can't reform. And this, I think, is what's also annoying people in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Sweden, and so on.
Talking about the Netherlands, they could be the next to leave. And one of the candidates is creating quite a firestorm and a lot of momentum is Geert Wilders. Here's what he said about Islamic extremists and what they're doing to that country.
Ideology is an ideology of violence, of hate, of submission, not of assimilation. And I believe Islam and freedom are incompatible. So if we want to stay free countries also for our children and grandchildren in the future, we have to have less Islam in our societies, because the more it dominates, the stronger it becomes and the less freedom we will have.
What's the blowback on that?
plainly, it is possible to be a good Muslim and a good Democrat. I have friends in the UK who are patriotic, who are glad to be there, and who are...
the Mayor of London.
Yeah, the Mayor of London, I mean, you know, he's not my cup of tea, he's a Labour politician, but no one could accuse him of any kind of extremism or radicalism, and that is the majority of the population. So we're talking about a minority, I mean, quite a small minority in proportionate terms. That can still be quite a lot of people in a large population. And you need to be laser-like in targeting what is it that is alienating some of these kids so much that they're prepared in extreme cases to go to Syria and Iraq to take up arms against their own country. And I think part of the answer is we've got to be more patriotic ourselves. We've got to project the sense that our countries are something worth being part of so that newcomers want to assimilate.
Yeah, and speaking of newcomers, here in this country we've got a newcomer to politics, Donald Trump, as our president now, because the people of America said, you know, what we've got is not working. That's essentially where Europe is right now.
Obviously, there is a sense on both sides of the Atlantic that things weren't working. There's been that sense since the financial crisis, I would say. People, I think, saw low and medium income families robbed through the tax system to rescue some very wealthy bankers and bondholders from the consequences of their own errors. I think there's been a reaction in Europe and in the US, and people have said the system wasn't working, we can do better. And that's perfectly understandable, but I'm optimistic about this country now. I think if I look at what's likely to happen here, about the US, absolutely. We're going to have deregulation, we're going to have the scrapping of Obamacare, we're going to have judges who rule on the basis of what the law says rather than what they think it ought to say, devolution of power to the states, return of power to Congress. I'm really optimistic about America's future.
You know what the president calls that? Draining the swamp.
Yeah, you know, you could also call it sticking to the Constitution.
Right, and Leslie, real quick, one of the ramifications is that Scotland goes, I want to be part of the UN. They're going to have a referendum in 2 years, within 2 years, to leave, to be part of the EU, rather, to leave Britain and the United Kingdom.
Well, we had a referendum in 2014. Scots voted by 55%. To 45% to remain in the UK. Since then, by the way, the oil price has collapsed. You know, and the fact of leaving the EU, funnily enough, makes the English market much more relatively important to Scotland. So my guess, I mean, you know, 3 of my 4 grandparents were Scottish, and Scots are an admirably bloody-minded and stubborn people. And if they're asked exactly the same question, you know, only 4 years later, they are likely to repeat the answer, but with that added emphasis that we use when somebody wasn't listening the first time.
All right. Well, if you want to defect to our country, you have our sponsorship.
That's
Daniel,
very kind.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, guys.
A disgusting new attack on the commander-in-chief, rapper Snoop Dogg, shooting a clown that is dressed up like Donald Trump, the president, in his latest music video.
Yep, and where's the outrage? Plus, the White House now explaining what the president meant by his explosive claim on wiretapping.
He doesn't really think that President Obama went up and tapped his phone personally. The president used the word wiretap in quotes to mean broadly surveillance and other activities.
So he was talking more generally, but Judge Napolitano says, you know what, there might never be evidence even if it did happen. He'll do some splaining when we roll on live from us. All right, we are back with extreme weather and a live look outside our world headquarters. Mother Nature is in full display at 6:46 on this Tuesday morning.
Right now, New York City is under a state of emergency. Schools have been closed here. The subways basically have all shut down as the Northeast is bracing for this monster storm. Let's get right to Rob Schmidt, who is live outside in New York City. Good morning, Rob.
Hey guys, yeah, I keep volunteering for these weather assignments. Someday I'll learn. It's windy out here and it's sleeting right now. I'm getting hit in the face with little ice pellets, which is a lot harder to take than snow. But as you see on the ground here, maybe 3-4 inches at the most on the ground at this point. And we are still under this, you know, we're expecting this blizzard to show up. But I can tell you right now, I'm no Janice Dean, but this is not 2 to 4 inches per hour as they were anticipating yesterday. So all indications from at least our perspective is this is not going to be a 2-footer here in New York City. I don't know about 50 miles west of here and north of here where it could get tougher. But as for New York, state of emergency in effect. All non-essential personnel told to not go into work. The city's going to be very slow today. It's going to be very quiet. And essentially they're telling you if you don't need to be out, don't come out because it is still going to be a messy day. And right now it's just sleeting and a little bit of snow too. We'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Rob Schmidt, live outside. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry to make you go out there. Come on in.
All right.
Take a break.
Brian and the judge.
Right. That's very nice of you to giggle at him, Ainsley. You'll have to deal with that later. Meanwhile, the White House faced with yesterday's deadline to show proof Trump Tower was wiretapped ahead of the election. Now explaining what the president really meant by his explosive claims, here's Sean Spicer.
He doesn't really think that President Obama went up and tapped his phone personally. I think, but I think there's no question that the Obama